and then they torpedoed it. They didn't want to study it. They didn't want to display it. They wanted it erased. Why? Because the Japanese I-400 was a monster. A 400-foot Leviathan designed to burn the Panama Canal and unleash biological terror on the US mainland. Japan had built a Death Star that terrified the Pentagon so much, they destroyed the evidence rather than let the Russians see the blueprints. Today, we dive into the billion-dollar secret the US Navy tried to bury at the bottom of the sea. Buckle up. To understand why this sub terrified the US Navy, you have to look at the sheer scale of the madness. In 1942, Admiral Yamamoto didn't ask for a submarine. He asked for a miracle. He demanded a ship that could sail 37,500 miles without refueling, enough to circle the globe 1.5 times. He wanted it to carry 3 bombers, and he wanted it to vanish underwater. The result was the I-400 Sentoku. This wasn't just a submarine, it was a floating city block. At 400 feet long and displacing 6,560 tons submerged, it was the largest submarine ever built. A record it held until the nuclear age in 1965. It was twice the length of a German U-boat and 3 times the size of an American Balao-class sub. To keep this monster from collapsing under water pressure, engineers had to invent a radical figure-8 double-hull design, essentially 2 pressure hulls welded side by side. But the real nightmare was the hangar. How do you put an airport on a submarine? You build a massive watertight tube on the deck, 102 feet long and 11 feet wide. Inside this steel claustrophobia, they crammed 3 Aichi M6A1 Ciron bombers. These weren't normal planes, they were origami bombers. The wings rotated 90 degrees and folded back. The tail folded down, the floats detached. They were engineered to fit into a tube just a few feet wider than a subway car. And the launch system? Pure sci-fi. You can't use a runway on a submarine. You have barely 85 feet of deck space. So they built a compressed air catapult that could blast a 4-ton bomber from 0 to 200 miles per hour in seconds. The plan was simple. Surface. Drag the planes out. Unfold the wings. Heat the engine oil to 60 degrees Celsius. Blast them off. A well-trained crew of 144 men could launch all 3 planes in 30 minutes. But in the middle of a war, 30 minutes on the surface is an eternity. And then there was the cost. This engineering didn't just cost money, it cost the Empire's lifeblood. Each I-400 required 2 million liters of diesel fuel to fill its tanks. In 1944, Japan was literally scraping pine roots to distill crude aviation fuel. Yet they were pouring millions of gallons into these leviathans. They used riveted hulls because they didn't have enough skilled welders left. They built a Rolls-Royce when they needed 10,000 Toyotas. It was the greatest engineering feat of the war. And it was the most expensive logistical suicide note in naval history. The I-400 wasn't built for patrol. It was built for a specific kill shot, the Panama Canal. Japanese strategists calculated that hitting the Goten locks, sitting 85 feet above sea level, would drain 26 million gallons of water, leaving the canal dry for 6 months. It was a brilliant mathematical checkmate. Yes, but by June 1945, Japan didn't need a delay, they needed a weapon of mass terror. So Vice Admiral Ozawa issued a new order, Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night. The target shifted to San Diego, California. The payload shifted to death. Orchestrated by Unit 731's General Shiro Ishii, the Ciron bombers were loaded with ceramic Uji bombs. Why ceramic? Because it shatters to release the payload alive. Millions of fleas infected with Yersinia pestis, the bubonic plague. The launch was set for September 22, 1945. The only thing that stopped the biological annihilation of the US West Coast was Japan's surrender on August 15th, just 35 days before the end of the world. When the I-400 finally surrendered to the USS Segundo on August 19th, the Americans found planes painted with fake US stars, proof of a suicide false flag mission. But the US wasn't the only one watching. In spring 1946, the Soviet Union demanded access to the subs under wartime treaty rules. The Pentagon panicked. They knew if Stalin got the blueprints for an underwater carrier, the Cold War would be lost before it started. So they launched Operation Road's End. On May 31st, 1946, days before Soviet inspectors arrived, the Navy towed the fleet to Point Deep 6 off Oahu and torpedoed them. When the Russians arrived, the US admiral shrugged and said they were unstable. It was a lie. We didn't sink them because they were junk. We sank them to steal the monopoly. Proof? Look at the 1950s SSG-574 Greyback and the Regulus missile program. It was the exact same design, a massive sub with a watertight deck hangar. The I-400 didn't die in 1946. It just got an American paint job. You think the underwater carrier is dead? Wrong. The idea of the I-400 didn't disappear in 1946. It just went dormant. And now, 80 years later, it has woken up. Smaller, smarter, and infinitely more expensive. Japan? The silent motherships. Let's start with Japan. Officially, Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution bans offensive weaponry. Tokyo cannot build aircraft carriers to Project Power, but Japanese engineers are masters of the loophole. They aren't building ships to launch planes, they are building ships to launch robots, and they are doing it right under our noses. Meet the Taigei class, the big whale. On paper, it looks like a standard diesel-electric attack submarine. But look at the specs. It is 84 meters, 276 feet, long with a displacement of 3,000 tons, making it one of the largest conventional subs in the world. Each hull costs roughly 70 billion yen, $640 million. But the real secret isn't the steel, it's the power source. The Taigei is the first operational submarine in naval history to completely ditch the old lead-acid batteries for massive banks of lithium-ion batteries manufactured by GS Yuasa. Why does that matter? Lead-acid batteries are heavy, weak, and take hours to charge. Lithium-ion gives the Taigei double the energy density. It allows the sub to sprint underwater at 20 knots for hours, not minutes. More importantly, it lets the sub sit on the ocean floor for weeks without ever snorkeling to run its diesel engines. It is a black hole in the ocean, totally silent, thermally invisible, and waiting. Japan's defense agency, ATLA, has quietly unveiled the partner for these subs, the Long Endurance UUV. It is a modular underwater drone that measures 10 meters, 33 feet, in its base configuration, but stretches to 15.6 meters, 51 feet, when equipped with the mission module. It runs on a futuristic fuel cell/battery hybrid system, giving it an endurance estimated at over 7 days of continuous autonomous operation. And here's the tactical nightmare for Beijing. The Miyako Strait is the 180-mile-wide gateway that the Chinese Navy must cross to reach the Pacific. Japan doesn't need to block it with battleships. The strategy is to park a silent Taigei-class submarine on the seabed. It acts as an underwater mothership, deploying a squad of ATLA drones. These drones detach, swim miles away to active shipping lanes, listen for Chinese submarines, and relay targeting data back to the Taigei via encrypted acoustic modems. The Taigei never moves, it never makes a sound, it just feeds coordinates to the anti-ship missile batteries on the Ryukyu Islands. The spirit of the I-400 is alive and well. Japan just swapped the diesel engines for lithium batteries and the suicide pilots for silicon chips. The United States, the hive. If Japan is building the mothership, the United States is building the hive. The Pentagon realized that in a war with China, one sub, one mission is a losing strategy. So they are currently ripping apart their own fleet to turn attack submarines into underwater aircraft carriers. The cornerstone of this plan is the Virginia-class Block V. The Navy is taking standard $3 billion nuclear attack subs and physically cutting them in half. They are welding in a massive new 84-foot section called the Virginia Payload Module, VPM, which increases the sub's total length to 460 feet and its displacement to over 10,000 tons. On paper, the VPM adds 4 giant vertical launch tubes that boost the Tomahawk missile capacity from 12 to 40. But in reality, those tubes are robot garages. They are designed to launch the AeroVironment Blackwing, a 20-inch 4-pound loitering reconnaissance system that shoots out of a standard 3-inch signal ejector. Once the canister hits the surface, the drone's wings pop out. Its electric motor spins up, and it links into a secure digital mesh. A single Block V submarine can carry dozens of these. Imagine the scenario. A US sub surfaces in the South China Sea, and instead of firing a shot, it sneezes a cloud of 50 Blackwings into the air. Instantly, the US commander has a live video feed of every ship in a 50-mile radius. The sub vanishes, but the drones stay. But why risk a manned crew at all? The ultimate evolution is the Orca XLUUV, Extra Large Unmanned Undersea Vehicle. Built by Boeing, this is the spiritual successor to the Japanese EAP-400, but without the need for oxygen. It is 85 feet long, weighs 50 tons, and runs on a hybrid diesel-electric engine with a staggering range of 6,500 nautical miles, enough to sail from San Diego to Shanghai and back, without a human soul on board. The scary part isn't the range, it's the 34-foot modular payload bay in the middle. Just like the I-400's hangar, this is empty space designed to carry whatever the mission needs. If the mission is surveillance, it deploys a swarm of sensor buoys. If the mission is attack, it launches the Hammerhead encapsulated torpedo. This is a smart mine that sits on the ocean floor, listening for enemy submarines. When it hears a specific acoustic signature, it launches a Mk-54 torpedo autonomously. The Navy has already ordered 5 of them. It is an unmanned underwater aircraft carrier that can park off the enemy coast for months, waiting for a single digital signal to wake up and choose violence. China, the Great Underwater Wall. And finally, we have the reason the Pentagon is actually panicking: China. Intelligence analysts have been watching a secret shipyard in Sanya, Hainan, and what they found is terrifying. Satellite imagery has revealed 2 massive extra-large UUVs. These aren't small drones. They are Leviathans, estimated to be 50 meters long. That is double the size of the American Orca. Why build them that big? Because China doesn't want a scout, they want a truck. These giants are large enough to carry heavy thermal torpedoes, sea mines, and even loitering munitions across the entire Pacific. China is effectively building a great underwater wall, a fleet of unmanned carriers designed to swarm US carrier groups the moment they enter the South China Sea. In the end, it's simple math. Japan invented the nightmare, the US perfected it. And now China is mass-producing it. 3 superpowers are racing to the bottom of the ocean because they have all learned the lesson of the I-400. Who controls the depths, controls the war. And if you want to control the truth behind the trillions, you know what to do. Subscribe to Front Cost, smash that like button, and watch our next video to see what else the Pentagon is hiding. We'll see you there.